So let's go through the test today. Now, so far we have covered actually all the basics of HTTP request, right? And response. You are familiar with the headers, the bodies, right? So all the parameters, and we know how all those bits and pieces works together. Now from a testing point of view, right? So we need to suppose we need to test all these things. So we have to now add assertions, right, in the test, or your validation points, right? What you are expecting and what is the actually it is coming, we need to verify. Now for that purpose we have actually test tab in Postman. You can see here, right, it is highlighted with green dot. This is the test tab. So in this tab only, like, we will add all our assertions specific to a particular request. Anyway, in API testing, right? So assertion should be specific to a specific request, right? It can be get, post, put, delete. But in the test tab, we will be writing the assertions. Before writing the assertions, right? So let's discuss few points on what kind of assertions actually we'll be doing here. We start with the status code, right? So always, we verify the status code first, whether we are getting a expected results or not. After the status code verification, we start with the headers, right? So what and all the response header is actually returning. So see, headers can have multiple things, right? Content type, then cookies, right? So you can put a check based on your requirement, right? uh, Suppose you are expecting only application JSON, or you are expecting a specific cookie in the header, right? So and what is the value of the cookie, whether those keys are present in the cookies. So many things you can check. I generally was doing headers, content type, cookies, and sometimes like expiry also it will return, right? And sometimes even token and all will come. Suppose you are testing the authorization stuff, right? So token should be there, valid token should be there. So that kind of validations mainly we do in the header. Okay. Then the body is the main part, right? So body, first thing is your schema, right? So schema means your body will be having different properties, and each property will be having different data type. So if we know that schema as it is, you can actually verify with the response. Yeah, I'll explain you how actually the schema will look like. First, let's run this and see what is the body. You can see here, right? From here only you can get. So this is the body it is returning. This is again a simple one. So this is the body we have. Now suppose you want to verify, the schema of this body, right? So how we will construct the schema. One way is you will get the schema in from your development team, right? So they will provide you exact schema they are using it. So mostly in the API documentation also they like a Swagger documentation, you will get it. In case you are not getting, you can always take from your development team. Okay, so for this particular this thing, I have created the schema. How did I created the schema? Basically, what is the first is like what is the type of this response? Now seeing itself, you can know this is an object, right? This is a JSON object. So the first thing is type, that is my JSON object. Okay, I am specifying that as an object. Now next thing is properties. Okay, so what are the properties of this particular response, right? The first one is args. You can see that is another JSON, right? Although we are not getting any data now, but that is another JSON, right? So you can specify type as object. Okay. Then I have headers, right? What is the type of my header? This is also another object. This is also a JSON object, right? You can see key value pairs here. Okay. So type object. Again, you can do one level down validation. I have not included that. Like for example, each field, right? There will be a data type associated with each parameter under the header, right? So it can be string. Here at least everything is string, but sometimes you may get some other data type like, okay, cookies. Now you can see it is one string, but it might be also an object, right? If it is returning multiple cookies. So that nested level validation also you can do, but you have to create your schema. Now for time being, I have created the first level only. Okay. And then you have the last one is URL. See here, this URL is not actually an object. This is a string. This is not JSON, right? So this is a plain string. So you can specify type as string. Anything else? If you see here, right, it will look like this. Okay, so these are the responses, and you can get the schema inside that. See, if you see here, name is string, photo URL is string, right? So this kind of things you will get it in your Swagger documentation. Otherwise, you have to construct it. Here, it will show like what is the model. Everything will be there in your documentation. Or in worst case, if you're not getting it, then you can always reach to your development team to get the document. So I have defined my schema. Let's try to validate things one by one so that it is clear to you. Okay, first thing is the status code, right? So let's copy only this. Let's don't run the all other things. I'll remove so that it will not create confusion. Show you how it actually works. So first first line of Postman test, right? So you can see pm.response.json. So response object is the object which will be having the raw response, and I am actually calling JSON method to get the JSON response. Okay, I have created a local variable here, and I am getting the response. Okay, and then suppose I want to print it, right? Let's remove the test also. I want to print the response in my console, right? You can also do it if you want along with me. I will ping you that here. So you can see the response here, right? It is actually printing the response to the console. This is JSON, whatever I was showing you, right? And that thing got printed. You can print anything here using the console.log. Okay. You can see here I have just printed one line also. So this is how actually you can add logs in that test tab. Okay, so we will use the console.log method. Next, in the line, I have defined a schema. So for time being, let's ignore it, the schema part. We will first verify the first one, that is the status code. Okay, so if I add the status code here, so how we are actually structuring our test. If you see here, pm.test module, we will be calling it pm.test function. And what this test function, if you just hover it, you can see exactly the definition of this. So this function allows you to name the test and pass parameters if you want. Now we are not passing any specific parameters, so you can see the bracket is empty. So first thing is you have to name your test, right? So that when you execute it, right, execute the test, you should know which test actually you are running. Okay, so next thing is pm.expect. So again, expect is your validation no, method. So what you want to validate basically, right? So what we are doing here, pm.response.code. Okay, and then we are trying to check if it is equal to 200. Okay, so if you see pm.respond.code, right, so you can also use a variable to get it and then verify something like this. For example, status code equal to here, pm.response.code, and you can use status code here. Okay, and we are verifying it using to equal method to 200. You can give any your expected status code here. So for all requests, it may not be 200, right? So it might be sometimes even negative scenarios, you have to test like 400, 500 or all. So you can do accordingly. I'll put this. Let's run it first. So if you see here, there's a test results tab. Okay, you can see pass. That means and it will print your test name. So I have given status code is 200, right? So whatever test name you are giving, it will show there. And there are other sections like pass, skipped, and failed. Okay, so it will you can see that. I'll just change the value and show you. Suppose I'm changing it to 201 and send it. So you can see now the test is failed. Assertion error, expected 200 to deep equal 201, right? So it is actually telling what is the error basically. Okay, and this error message is coming from the framework, so it is printing that. And Postman internally use Chai framework. There's a JavaScript framework. I'll show you that. Yeah. This is an assertion library basically. Okay, so I'll add this link in our notes for today. So it has a API documentation, so you can see that documentation and assert also, like Postman use this actually. So all those syntax in Postman, whatever you are actually, you'll be doing it, so you can relate to this particular framework. Okay. 200. Save. So we are just testing the status code, right? So again, only checking the status code is not sufficient for us. So let's verify some other things. Okay, the response properties, that is the main validation, right, for us. So we want to see what and all properties are coming. So if you see in the response, right? So for example, I'm verifying the URL, right, and the host. So URL is direct parameter, and host is actually under headers, right? So these two parameters I want to verify. Now my first test is done. So I'll copy that. I'll explain, what at least. See, if you see here, same syntax, we have to use the expect. Then response JSON is nothing but our response JSON variable. Then dot URL, right? So again, syntax is same as how you access your variables, right? So your JSON objects basically. So dot URL, and I'm passing what is my expected value here. It is actually simple. Okay, uh, just give that variable name, then dot what is the property you want to verify, and then what is the expected value. For the second one, right? So I'm, since that is under headers, if you see URL is directly in the response, right? But host is actually under headers. So how you will travel that local variable dot headers dot host, okay, and then give your parameters, right, the expected values basically. So yeah, so we are now able to verify this, right? So I'll copy this as well for you if you want to try. Okay, so next thing is we will see how we can actually verify something from the environment. Okay, so response property matches the environment variable. Now to verify something from the environment, first thing is like you have to go to your environment tab right here, and you have to add it basically here. Okay, so you have to give the same name, and then you have to give the value, current value. Okay, so give the name. So if you go back to our collection, if you see I have already added something from the environment, right? So here let's create a variable called host. Yeah, and then so not to get anything from the environment, right? So we have to use pm.environment.get, and then you have to give the key.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, after that we have a response already, right? So response JSON, and then headers.host. Even if you want to use this particular thing, we can use it instead of like pm dot fully. I can use because I already have a variable. So response JSON dot headers dot host equal to host. That means we are reading it from the environment. So if I am trying to send it, you can see this result is passing. Okay, so this is the way how you will verify something which is not in the test, like your global variable or your collection variable or your environment variable, right? So whenever you are defining something there, you want to add an assertion, you can add it here. We have verified headers and we have verified the properties also. So what next? Now suppose I want to verify something in the headers, right? So till now we have verified in the, I think, response only. Now I want to verify something in the headers. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Okay, so here there is something called header, right? So we know different parameters in the response header, different parameters will come. So how we can verify? Suppose you want to check, right, if any particular header is present, right? So if you see in the body of this request, right, you can go to console. You can see here, right, response header, right? So there are multiple headers here. Date is there, content type is there, connection, content length, vary, set cookies, right? There are multiple headers here. And suppose you want to verify all these headers, right? How you can verify? There are two things. One is verify if any header is present. Next thing is the value of the header, right? So both I am showing here. The first verification is like, suppose you want to verify a specific header is present or not, you can do that. And next, the line number 37 and line number 38 is similar, like response dot headers. Now the get content type basically, and then to equal, you have to give what is that expected value for you. Okay, and you can also do partial validations like I think contents and all, but now it is a deep copy. To equal means it will actually do a deep copy like complete equal, because when you receive response headers, right, so the content type will come as like application JSON, then the characters set also will come. So if you run this, you can see the test is actually passing. You can run from your side as well. Okay, this is how we can do the header verification. Header is you will get for all, like any request you send, the server will also send a response plus header. Okay, next I have added one test for cookies. Okay, yeah, Postman gives us actually one object to access the cookies. We'll see that now. Okay, so this is the Postman object, like pm.cookies, right? So pm.cookies will be having all the details, all the values associated with the cookie it received, right? So if you go to console again, and you can see what is the cookie actually, it is, I'm getting it, right? The set cookies header will tell you that you have a cookie. So suppose I want to verify that sales.sid cookie is present. So I can use line number 42 pm.cookies. Then it has this particular cookie. It will be same. I think pm.expect. I'm back. Okay. So to get the values, right? So what you have to do, pm.cookies dot get, and you have to give the cookie name. Let's first print this and see if it is returning. Yeah, I'm getting it, right? This is the value it is returning. So what we can do here, we can do pm dot expect dot 2 equals, I can give the value. Maybe it is dynamic. We'll see if every time it is returning the same or not. Okay. It may fail. See, it is dynamic basically, right? So cookies obviously will be dynamic every time. What is the value? So it will set a new cookie. Then at least we can verify like it is not same. This is also important for us, like how we can test the response time. So basically, Postman this response object, right? So it returns a response time, okay, and like how much time actually it takes. Now you can print that in the console. What assertion I am giving, like it should be below 10,000 millisecond, right? So that is the assertion I am giving here. Okay, so if suppose it is above 10,000 millisecond, then my request should fail. And response has this response time already object property, so we can use that. If you see here, it took 729 millisecond. You can try it out. Suppose I have given 500, then it would have been failed. It is not failing because now this time it took, I think, less than 249. Response time is simple actually. Now let's verify the data type of the response, right? So now till now we have verified the values, right? Suppose you want to verify the data type. It's like a partial schema validation. So we can do that. This is for data type. So what we are doing here, we are just passing the type, like as I explained the schema, right? So the high level, the schema is an object, but if I say the specific property like URL, no, URL should be a string. That is not an object, right? So that kind of check also possible to do using Postman. It's like partial data type validation. So let's see what happens if I send this request. Yeah, so this time my response check failed because it took more time. Yeah, this data type is passing. Yeah, this is also similar, like I am testing a specific property, right? For example, I have first ARGS property, right? So I'm expecting an empty array, right? So I can actually specify like that ARGS to be empty, right? So let me try that. If you see, sometimes like you will be more concerned about the specific properties, right? So we will do some exercise tomorrow on like how you can actually do a deep level comparison. This is like a first level, but we will also see like how we can do a deep level comparison, like nested JSONs, nested arrays, right? So in real time you may not get a response as simple as what I'm actually showing it, right? So you may get a very complex response where you may need to go 2 or 3 level down and then verify, know what is the properties or what is the object, right? Those kind of things. So it also provides, like, you can test something like this, for example, this ARGS, right? So if you see the response body here, so this is an for now every time it is coming as an empty JSON, right? So there is nothing, basically it is an empty object. So we can, suppose we want to add a validation, like, this should be always empty, right? So how we can actually do that? Just, to be empty, then it will take care, like line number 57. The first parameter, I want to verify that it is an empty parameter. Save it and send. And the final one, we have created a schema, right? So suppose you want to verify the entire schema. Okay, to verify the schema, first we need that schema to be defined. It is also possible, right? You can define that schema in a file and verify. We'll be covering those kind of scenarios, like how we can actually parse data files, external files from Postman. Now for time being, yeah, we are defining in the same test like in the above, right? We have added the schema, and the syntax is like, response to have a JSON schema, which should be exactly same as whatever I have defined. So in this case, if you change, if anything change, right? So in the schema, basically, so your test will fail immediately. Okay, so you see that test is passed, basically the response schema test. I can show you, for example, here, right? So suppose URL you are giving as object, and then send it. Response schema. Now you can see the error is coming. Right? Because this is a string and you are trying to verify with object, so you are getting an error. Yeah, these are the simple the validations I wanted to cover before we proceed to the complex ones.